Hi and welcome to Move Better, Feel Better here on Radio Kidnappers. You're listening to Sarah McCallum from Movement Works, and today's topic is all about breathing. And breathing is a very interesting topic. We do it all day, every day, and most people don't even think about it. It's one of those things that happens literally in the background. And it's good that we don't have to think about it all of the time. But our breathing reflects every emotional or physical effort and every disturbance. And that's a quote by Dr. Moshe Feldenkrais, who is the founder of the method that I use. And breathing is very, very important in how we move. So it reflects our emotional state, it reflects what we're doing, how we're feeling about life. And people always wonder, am I breathing right? In, out, repeat. Is that enough? What kind of, do I breathe through my nose? Do I breathe, how many breaths per minute is normal? Do I breathe, in? Do I breathe a longer exhalation out? Is there a sequence of breathing? When I do particular movements, do I need to breathe in a particular way? So all of these questions, maybe you may not have asked yourself that, but if you've ever had any difficulty with your breathing, if you have anxiety, or if you exercise a lot, breathing is probably something that you've thought a little bit about. And I have come back to this topic because it's very important. It is the most fundamental movement, if you like, that we do. We don't think of breathing as movement, but it is. It's the basis of life. And without that, of course, we wouldn't be here. We, from the very first breath to our very last, it is, that movement that we do. And it's a movement that we probably do the most often. So I've been reading over the holidays a book called Breathing, The New Science of a Lost Art by a fellow named James Nestor. And you may have also seen his recent article, or an article about him in the Listener magazine, in the January issue of the Listener magazine. And he's talking a lot about, the science of this lost art, if you like, and why breathing is actually important. And as I said, of course, breathing is important to just simply be here, to stay alive, to oxygenate all of our cells, and so forth. But breathing can help to calm the nervous system down. It can help you get more out of your workouts. It can help you even sleep better. There's a lot of people who have problems sleeping, and interestingly, many people who have insomnia, many people who snore, a lot of that is to do with breathing problems, and that can be resolved by learning how to breathe a little bit better. And in the work that I do, which is called Feldenkrais, rhymes with nice, and it's about learning about how you breathe, all of the different moving parts that are involved in your breathing, and how you can adjust your breathing for different situations. I have a friend, and we were talking about this, and she said, "Oh no, there's definitely a right way to breathe." And again, going back to the fact that you breathe differently in different situations. You breathe differently when you cry. You breathe differently when you laugh. You breathe differently when you sing. You breathe differently when you swim, when you sleep. So, every activity we do, we have a slightly different breathing style, a different timing perhaps. And we also all have our own breathing habits, how we breathe, how often we breathe, the volume that we breathe, the parts of ourselves that we actually use for our breath. Okay, but having said that, and saying that there is not necessarily any one right way to breathe, it's about adjusting yourself to the situation at hand, there are some things that you can do to improve your breathing. And one thing that is really, really important is about this thing on our face, which is the nose. We think about often breathing through our mouth, but breathing through your nose is actually a much more powerful, and valid way to breathe. And the reason for that is that in your nose, we've got nose hairs, that actually act as little filters. It also warms the air to the right kind of temperature for us to take in. It also has like a little process at the back of the nasal cavity, and that changes and absorbs the oxygen in a different way and mixes it up and creates this nitric oxide, which actually also helps to give us more oxygen. It actually helps to open up our blood vessels. So, even breathing through your nose can actually help things like your blood pressure and your levels of tension. So breathing through the nose. Now, then it's like, okay, so that's breathing in, how do I breathe out? Again, breathing out through the nose is quite desirable, but of course you can also breathe out through your mouth as well. But just try breathing in through your nose and out through your nose and see how you go. Now, many of us are habitual mouth breathers. Okay, if you snore, you will know that you breathe through your mouth at night time. That's what happens. That you can't while you're there, and you'll wake up with that dry mouth. Yeah. The other thing is, I remember a friend said to me once, I've encouraged my kids to breathe through their mouth to sort of freshen things up. No. This breathing through the nose will freshen it, and in fact, if you breathe through your mouth, you'll get a lot more bacteria and different things in there. So, you'll actually have more chance of having bad breath if you breathe through your mouth than if you breathe through your nose. Okay, so yet another reason why actually breathing through your nose can be a helpful thing. Now, many people, if you do have breathing difficulties, you'll likely find, maybe if you're an asthmatic, maybe if you've got allergies or if you've got congestion, there's even like people who have, we often have like kind of sort of slightly crooked noses, not on the outside, but even on the inside, what they call a deviated septum, so that maybe one side of your nostril is a little bit bigger than the other, or we have these things called adenoids at the back of our nasal cavity, which can sometimes sort of block things up, and we've all had colds where, you're so stuffed up you can't breathe through your nose. So of course, breathing through your mouth is how we work with that. But having said that, again, just give it a go. What is it like to breathe in through your nose and out through the nose? Is it possible? And if it's not possible, then maybe there is something else going on, and maybe it's something that you need to get checked out, because some of us have these difficulties and we don't even know. But even if you do have a particular difficulty, and you have got one of those situations happening, starting to learn to breathe through your nose can actually literally change the shape of our nose, our nasal cavities, and even actually our faces. So when we, even as kids, breathe through our mouth, it will actually change the shape of our chins and our faces and our jaws, which is a really interesting kind of idea. And sometimes people who have a little bit more gum showing when they smile, sometimes that's a genetic thing, but sometimes that's actually a sign that they've actually been a habitual mouth breather and done that. And that actually kind of literally changes the inside of the shape of your whole palate inside your mouth. So super interesting, right? Just breathing can have that kind of effect. So just give it a go and try with the nose breathing, and don't make it a challenge. The other thing that I'd like to talk about, and what we do in Feldenkrais classes, workshops and one-on-ones, I'm always talking to people about their breathing and how they breathe and how it makes them feel, is about the timing of your breathing. And this fellow James Nestor, who wrote this book, he was talking about that as well. And it's like, so how, the normal standard, if you like, or the accepted number of breaths per minute is sort of, for an adult, is 12 to 20 breaths per minute, which is actually quite a lot. And if you multiply that out over a day, over a week, over a year, over your lifetime, that's millions and millions and millions of breaths. And the interesting thing about breathing is that, more breathing is not better. Okay, like just because you breathe, if you have 20 breaths per minute, it doesn't mean that your breathing is you're going to be better than the person who is breathing, say, 12 per minute. Okay, so it's more about the quality of the breathing as well as the frequency and how that actually feels for you. Now, an interesting thing here is, so that's a standard, say 12 to 20, and you can just set a little timer and count what is your standard breath cycle. And do this like not after you've just been for a walk or you're feeling stressed out. Sit down or even lie down, set a little timer on your phone for 1 minute and count how many times you take an in-breath. in that minute, and that will give you your average number. And maybe you might even want to take it over a couple of minutes and divide that. So say, do 3 minutes, divide the number of breaths that you take by 3 to get your average, and just see where you are on that scale. And if you're over that 20 breaths, then maybe there's something there that you need to do to slow that down. 12, say about standard, but actually the ideal thing, and what James Nestor was talking about in his book, is to actually even go slower again, and that the ideal number of breaths per minute to help that whole system just go is actually 5.5. Or that's just that's too hard to figure out for the math. So let's just round it up to 6 breaths per minute. So that's about half the normal. Well, that is half the normal of, or the minimum that they're saying is normal. So just see, is it possible? Okay, what your standard is, but could you then slow your breathing down a little bit more and find out how does that make you feel? What happens? So that they actually, and they have done studies on this, that if you slow your breathing down, that you will actually get those feelings of calm. You'll access that, what they call the parasympathetic nervous system, or the rest and digest, and you just get that nice sort of feeling. And a really interesting point that is made in this book is that a lot of different prayers actually will put you into that timing of the breathing, which is interesting, and that goes across all sorts of different religions, from Buddhism to Catholicism to Hinduism, all of these things that actually are putting you into that slightly calmer state through how we say things like prayers. So that's also a really interesting thing. But I found that when we get really excited, we speed up and we go, and if we get nervous, we talk like this, and our breathing gets really fast, and we don't really talk, blah, blah, blah. Then it's like, okay, how can we just take a step back, slow it down? And so if you can't slow your breathing down, that may be again a sign that there's some interference, or that perhaps, like I know, for example, people who are asthmatic, they breathe a lot more shallowly in general, and they generally will breathe a little bit quicker. So again, learning to breathe that little bit slower can really actually help. And so there's all sorts of different breathing difficulties that we can encounter in our lifetime, from the things like asthma, and there's the sleep apnea, which happens, when we're sleeping and we get that, people will snore and hold their breath and stop breathing for a moment and then and begin again, okay? And that's not a very good quality for our system. All of these small things that affect us, they don't make us feel good. Like if you wake up in the morning and you've been snoring, or you've maybe experienced some kind of form of sleep apnea, you're not going to wake up feeling refreshed. You're not going to feel really good during the day. And that affects our whole life, not just when we're sleeping, but all through the rest of the day as well. So again, as I said before, we've talked about timing. We've talked about whether we're breathing through the mouth or the nose. And I'd also like just to point out about, we're often really focused on our inhalation, like take a deep breath. Okay, but when you're feeling anxious or tired or stressed, or you've just been for a run and you're trying to get your air back, you're not going to be able to take a deep breath, because your breathing's compromised in some way. So the easiest thing to do is actually to exhale. So the relaxation, if you like, is on the exhalation. Our body is designed to bring in air. Like that's what we will do. If you hold your breath, your body eventually will go, and then you breathe out, and then you'll bring air back in again, okay? So inhalation is an automatic thing, and often it's actually that we don't exhale fully, that we don't feel like we're getting enough air. And if you've been holding your breath and you try to inhale some more, you're just like trying to bring more in, but you haven't let that other air out. So we actually need to let that all out, okay? And this is where sometimes I do think actually breathing through the mouth is really helpful, because you get the sound, you get the and you can really feel that air coming out. And also with your exhalation, is your inhalation, here's another thing to start to be aware of your breathing, you know, is it right? And I say it's not about right, it's just about starting that awareness and noticing what happens. Is your inhalation longer or shorter or the same length of time as your exhalation? And most people will find that they're about the same. Some people might have the habit of a longer exhale. If you've got something like, you know, COPD or asthma, you'll probably find that your exhalation is quite short. And again, finding that ability to learn to exhale, a lot of psychologists, meditations, you know, relaxation programs will teach you about breathing in and, you know, then letting the breath out. So, and having a longer exhale. So, for example, a really common thing to do is to do an inhale for 4. So you're just coming 1, 2, 3, 4, little hold, and exhale for 8. And it's a really interesting thing. A lot of people, when they exhale, they kind of feel like there's almost like it's like jitterbugs, it's like it's jerky, it's they can't get this. Yeah, if you're a singer or something like this, you'll probably, you know, have better breathing techniques or be able to do that, you know, to be able to sing those really long notes, for example. But a lot of us, you know, struggle with that. So again, you can just play with that. And next time you're maybe sort of feeling a little bit anxious or just want to notice what's happening. You know, this is a really good one to do at your desk at work, is just let it out. Yeah, take a little pause, then let the breath come back in. So thinking about your exhalation is your relaxation. Really, really important to remember to actually let the air out. You know, that breathing is you know, a multiple process. Okay. And as I said, there's a zillion different ways to breathe. There are so many different breathing techniques out there. There's lots of different yoga techniques about making, you know, a little sound in the back of your throat, about the alternative nostril breathing, you know, which accesses different kind of parts of the system, different parts of the brain. There's, you know, the Wim Hof method, which is almost like a sort of a situation about hyperventilating. There's what they call box breathing, where you breathe in, you hold, you breathe out, you hold, literally like a little box, and set the timing for that. There's the idea of letting the inhalation be a little bit shorter than the exhalation. Yeah. So, or the exhalation being longer than the inhalation. So it's not that we're trying to restrict the inhalation, but that the exhalation is longer. There's what we call diaphragmatic breathing, which is like breathing into the belly. And just to go back to that point of breathing through the nose, if you breathe through your mouth, it is much, much harder to access. You can't, in fact, you can't really access your diaphragm and that diaphragmatic breathing if you're breathing through your mouth. Okay, so breathing through your nose is going to help actually deepen your breath. Now, if you don't know where your diaphragm is, that sits there just right up underneath your ribs. So underneath your rib cage is this big like dome kind of trampoline, so that when we breathe in, it goes, and then when we breathe out, it comes back up. And most of the time, it's not in our voluntary control. If you've ever had the hiccups, you know, that's your diaphragm bouncing up and down, you know, yeah. So that's a really important breathing muscle. And sometimes when we've gone into a state of shock or something's happened in our lives, it kind of goes, freezes up, and we don't feel like we can take a deep breath, yeah, or we breathe into our chest. Now, people worry about breathing into the chest. Oh, I'm a shallow breather, I only breathe into my chest. Yeah, your lungs are here and, you know, around the back as well. So important actually that your chest can actually move when you breathe. It's okay. So let's have a little play with where or how you can feel your breath. So I just want you to put one hand on your chest, one hand on your belly, and notice when you're breathing, what moves? What can you feel? Where do you feel that? Do you feel your chest rise when you breathe in? Do you feel your belly? Maybe both. Both is also an option. Yeah. And it's just something else to remember. Okay, let's just change the position of our hands. So bring them to your ribs, and you can just put them, depending on how you are, you can put them on your lower ribs or even on your back, the back of your ribs, and just feel, can you sense some kind of breathing here? Because the other thing is that we forget is our breathing is actually a three-dimensional activity. It's not just like, out here. Yeah, we can actually breathe through the side here, breathe into our back, a little bit up, a little bit down. So it's like a big balloon coming out. So really important. And just come back to your breathing for a moment. And even if you couldn't feel much going on in your chest, just put both hands on your chest and just do a slight compression here. And let yourself breathe anywhere else but the chest. You can breathe anywhere else but the chest. You're just going to just slightly restrict the movement here. Add a little bit of constraint. And just sense where you can feel the breath. And if that feels too much, of course, you don't want to make it a challenge. You don't want to squash it out completely, but just to feel, what else can you access? Can you sense some more breathing happening in the belly, in the sides of the ribs, or even into your back? Yeah. Okay, and then let that go and sense where you can feel your breathing. Yeah. So we want to access all of these different kind of moving parts of ourselves, because again, we have habits about where we move, where we don't move. And it's a really interesting thing to know, because a lot of us restrict our ribs, for example, or we hold our belly so tight that we can't actually breathe into our belly. So this is what we do in these Feldenkrais classes and one-on-ones is to learn to find different parts of yourself so that you can access the most quality, easy, full breath for whatever activity you're doing, for whatever emotion you're feeling, for what it is that you are doing throughout your day. So hope you found that a little bit interesting, learning a little bit more about your breath. I say it's a truly fascinating subject, and I say it's really good to learn a little bit more about this thing that we do all day, every day, and to make the most of that so that we can make the most of our lives. So you've been listening to Sarah McCallum from Movement Works on the Move Better, Feel Better program. And I will be running a breathing workshop in March, which will be going into a lot more depth about this, figuring out how you move with your breathing, about the different timings of the breathing, about the volume of breath, the different moving parts, if you like, what we need to use to do that. And so if you want to know more, you can check out the website on www.movementworks.co.nz, or check out the Facebook page, Movement Works NZ, or give me a call on 021 996709. Would love to hear from you and to help you move better and feel better. Thanks, and see you next time.